Hi, this is John from Sharp Mountain Games, and today we're talking about Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log, solo role-playing game. And we'll look at what I liked about it and what I didn't like as much about it right after the intro. So here's the Star Trek Adventures book, and it's about 324 pages, so I'm not going to go through everything here, otherwise we'll be here for an hour, and you'll get bored and click away. So it gives you the traditional, intro to the Star Trek universe and some things about Star Trek and role-playing. The artwork is very nice in here. I don't know if it's also from the other Star Trek Adventures products or not, but there's certainly a lot of artwork in here. And it really spends a lot of time going through the different societies and economies and technologies and weapons and transporter systems. So there's a little bit of the history of the Federation. And it does go up to, I believe, Picard in terms of the more modern series, and a little bit about Discovery. I guess in one of the later Discovery series, they go into the future. So it talks a little bit about that into the 27th century. And there's really a lot of pages on that. And it gives you just some idea. Okay, do you want to do a deep space exploration game, scientific or tactical missions? And it does address what a little bit, not a lot, but what if you want to play a non-Starfleet game? How would you go about doing that? Far from home games, which is kind of like Voyager, and so some different styles. Now, finally, at about page 72. It gets into creating a character. Now, this is very different for me because I'm an old school kind of person where you're creating your character within the first few pages. And it gives an extensive thoughts and processes for generating your character. If you want to do a medical officer or a command officer, different values, I guess, that you can have. Now, there's one weird thing about the values that I would say. Like, the values can come into play during play, but then it says you have to change them, like you would get a new one. And I don't quite understand that because I think, for most of us and even for most literary characters, if you have a particular value, you tend to keep it. If your value is life is sacred or exploration and hard work are good, I think you could deepen it or maybe get a little more nuanced in some things. But I don't know why you'd have to abandon a value. That seems weird to me. Maybe it's something I'm missing. Now, species. I'm going to talk about this especially in the end. It gives a long list of different species you can possibly play. However, all they do, if you pick a particular species, is it adds to one of your attributes. There's no rules in here for things like, well, what about like Vulcan mind powers, like the Vulcan mind meld, or the Horda? All right, that's great if you want to play a Horda, but there's no rule for, okay, well, they can go through rock or generate acids, or betazoids can read people's minds. So I think they were trying to keep the system simple, which is good, but maybe it went just a little too simple in that there's nothing for, what if your character was a freed Borg? Maybe they'd have certain mechanical abilities or computer kind of abilities, and that's not in here. You'd have to either tack that on, or I guess they just sort of figure, well, you'll just sort of do it literarily. And that's a critique I would have of the whole system. This would be a really good way to generate a character for a science fiction novel. Not necessarily even a Star Trek novel, but, you can decide because it gives you things about their upbringing and their environment. It would be really good in that way, really good for a writer. But it gets really, really deep. If you want to sit down and quick play, quickly, it's harder to do that. Now, like diplomatic, you can see this goes on for a long time. Now, later on, it does give you a more streamlined way to generate a character, and that's what I used when I tried my sample. Then it gets into ships, and you can select a ship class. It also gives you ways later on to kind of customize the ship. Maybe there's something special. And it tries to get into the ships from the different eras that you see on the different TV shows, obviously. Like these ship talents are special things. Maybe your ship has something special, that automated defenses or advanced transporters, or something that makes it a little bit more unique from every other one in the fleet. It also addresses, well, what if you want to do, a starbase, a space station, or a planetary starbase as your home base, kind of like Deep Space Nine. And then here, you finally get to the rules at page 180. You have to get through 180 pages of reading to get to the rules. And I think this is a problem too, because earlier it is giving you some examples right here. If you choose this trade, here's how you might use it, but you don't even know how to roll the dice yet. So maybe it's not a flaw in the book, but I would almost say read this first. Go to page 180 and read this first, just so you know how you roll the dice. It's a 2d20. So basically, it's almost like you have advantage on every roll. Now, your stats aren't as high as they might be in a like a Dungeons and Dragons game, but because you're having basically advantage on every roll, that's like getting a +4 on average. Advantage isn't a strict linear mechanic or mathematical dice roll, but that's why the numbers are perhaps a little bit lower. And it tries to streamline things. And there's also ways, like if you're playing the captain, depending on what ship you're on, it gives you some ideas. All right, well, here's what your science officer stats would be, or your ship's computer abilities would be. So you could be Captain Janeway or Captain Kirk or Captain Picard, and say, okay, science officer, I need you to make this roll, or you'd think that, and then it does give you some numbers for that. And here's where it gets into the weird thing about challenging your values and changing your values. And again, we should all try to grow as people, but I don't think certain values in our lives ever change, like life is valuable, or we should treat other people decently, or we should work hard, or things like that. So that's a weird thing in the system, and I'm not sure that I get it. So then it does give you some combat. Combat is much simpler. It's basically 3 strikes and you're out, and only the player characters roll, which I think makes sense for a solo game. So if you decide you're going to enter a fist fight, well, if you're successful, you hit the other guy. If you're unsuccessful, then you're going to take damage. And like I said, it's basically 3 strikes and you're out. And then there is some chance that you could get, a major injury possibly from it too. So I think that does work a little bit. Star Trek isn't, again, like D&D perhaps, where you shouldn't be, wading in with your phaser to every conflict. And then it talks about, if you want to do things with the starship here. And it also gives you the option, okay, do you want to play solo? Or what if you want to play in a group? You could use these rules for group play if you wanted to. Although, again, I think you're going to hit that thing where, well, where's the rules for Vulcans? Where's the rules for if I'm an ex-Borg? Or where's the little benefits maybe we get from species and backgrounds and things like that? Then talks about the 3-act structure. And it suggests a 3-act structure with maybe 5 scenes in each act for 15. And then let's just flip ahead a little bit, because then and there are ways also with the 2d6 or 2d20. If you roll both of them and you succeed, you can have an advantage. If you roll both of them and you fail, you'd have a complication. So that's the little twist on it's basically d20 roll under. And then here's where it gets into, now there's this probability matrix, where you could say, well, is it likely? Is it not likely? And you could still do a dice roll. And here's where you generate your mission types. And these would be really good, if you need a way to jog your imagination. Okay, what kind of mission are we going to play today? And certainly you don't have to roll. You could always just pick one right here off the table. And then what kind of themes do you want? Advantages and complications. And then it does give you tables for, okay, different kind of planets and subspace and dangers and friends, generating non-player characters, and even beasts of the galaxy if you want to create monsters or aliens to fight, spaceborne entities. So there's a lot of good tables here for a potential writer or for your solo role playing. And then there's some things about locations. And then a few additional matrices here in the back about what to do on your downtime. One thing I think that, and I'll say this again in the summary, is it kind of, all those tables get you started on an adventure. But it's not like a choose your own adventure book where they give you, step by step, and here's maybe what you could do next. So in a way, it's more of a writer's toolkit. And let's talk about that in the summary. So the bottom line is, should you buy this product? Let's just summarize some of the pros and cons. Let's look at the pros. It is a nice product, and it does give you a nice kind of overview and history of the Star Trek universe, if that's something that you're looking for. Now, it gives very detailed character generation chapters, And it does give you a lot of tables for generating random ideas for missions and planets and creatures and things like that. So in a way, I think this would actually be more useful for people who want to write science fiction or even fantasy, because the character generation, you could fit that in. I think it's more of almost a writer's toolbox rather than strictly a solo role-playing game. And that's where the cons come in. In terms of the system, there's just no extraordinary powers at all. There's no rules for the Vulcan mind meld or the Vulcan nerve pinch or Beta Zeds reading people's minds. So it's just not there. You'd have to add it yourselves. And it's a very simple system. And I think that's okay, but I also think you could probably cobble together a system that would work just as well from a game you already own. Maybe just streamline some of something you already own. I think it's very good, all those random tables for idea generation and generating an opening incident, but it doesn't really help you or lead you through, well, how would you do this for an entire adventure? Okay, well, this happens, and then what happens next? And that was a problem when I sat down and I tried to play it. Yeah, okay, I got this opening incident, and they're trying to make first contact on a planet, and they find out the Klingons are already there. Well, what happens next? And the book doesn't really have that kind of leading you through. Now, maybe it can't be like a choose your own adventure book, but there just wasn't much there or enough there for me to go forward. I kind of got to a point where I was stuck, and I've been running games for a lot of years. I think one thing that it really could have helped is if it had given you an example adventure. All right, here's one, and here's some guidelines, or at least an outline to show you, all right, here's the 3 acts maybe you want to put into your own adventure. So I'm sorry to have to give it a mixed review. I think there are some good things about the product. I don't think that it's quite as robust as it could be for, solo generation and running through an entire adventure in that way. But it could be a good writer's toolkit. So those are my 2 cents. You can certainly tell me if you've read the product, what you think about it down below. Maybe there's something I'm missing or I misread in the book. I'd be happy to have that discussion with you. And we hope to see you next time. So if you'd like to check out or purchase any of our products, we have 3 books that are in print: The Star Mermaid, The Dwarven Pickup Truck, and The Sky Tree. And the best place to get the print versions is through Amazon or Lulu. And also over on DriveThru, you can get the digital versions, or we have a number of other adventures and character classes and even some stock art available on DriveThru. And then on the Roll20 Marketplace, we have some map packs and also character cards for use. So wherever you like to shop, odds are we're there. And hopefully, we hope that you'll subscribe and like the video, and we'll see you next time.